Hello everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 208. I decided to skip the morning update today, considering I got home from the mountains so late. I didn't really have the time to prepare a proper show for you folks, so I decided to skip it today, and there really was not much news that needed to be brought to the forefront. So it kind of worked out for me. Now, tomorrow I have a very special treat for you all. On tomorrow's program, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Stephen DeLay, and he is going to talk to you about the letter that he wrote to Harvard in regards to their piss-poor handling of their relationship and the outing of that relationship in regards to Jeffrey Epstein. So Dr. DeLay is pumped to speak to everybody. He's really excited to talk to the audience and talk to everybody out there and let you know just what motivated him to get involved in the fray and to open up what is now another front in the war on these predators. So Dr. DeLay is going to have some explosive things to talk about, some very exciting things to talk about, and I am certainly looking forward to speaking with the good doctor here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. Now, with that in mind, I have an article tonight from The Observer, and this article goes all the way back to July 9th of 2019, but I thought it was fitting considering that Dr. DeLay is going to be on the program tomorrow discussing this very topic. I thought it would be a nice addition to the catalog and a nice addition to the story because it adds some more context to just how deep Jeffrey Epstein was in with Harvard. Now, we've went over all of the backstory pretty much, right? Everybody's caught up pretty much. We all know what occurred. We all know that Harvard was up to their ears in a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and it wasn't just professionally, okay? There was a lot of personal relationships there, and when you look at Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers and his law team and the people that he ran to every single time he was in trouble, well, every single one of them was from Harvard or had Harvard ties, and there was a reason, right, folks? It wasn't just because Harvard is a great school. It was because Jeffrey Epstein was so wrapped up with Harvard University and with the people that inhabited the halls of Harvard that whenever he was in trouble, he just had to reach out to one of these professors and they would point him in the direction of the proper legal mind. And all roads, obviously, lead back to Allen. I kept my underpants on Dershowitz. All roads lead back to Dershowitz when it comes to Harvard. All roads lead to Dershowitz when it comes to putting together these teams from Harvard. And when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein's within the law school of Harvard, there is zero doubt that the conduit was, and always has been Alan Dershowitz. But folks, this is why I was so adamant about the fact that the panel of the 11th Circuit Court judge that heard the case down there, well, one of those judges was from Harvard. Now, even if the judge, I forget his name, Newsom, I think, maybe Newsom, either way, if that judge was not from Harvard, then it wouldn't even give people an in to look and say, oh boy, the Harvard connection rearing its ugly head again. But no, they're so tone deaf and they're so, they just don't care, right? They do not care what it looks like. So they trot out a 90-year-old man and a judge from Harvard to hear this case, something that's this important. And that's why I criticized it then, and that's why I'll still criticize it now. Out of that whole entire panel, you couldn't have found another judge who was not related to Harvard or tied to Harvard in any way. All the judges on the bench are all involved with Harvard. Because to me, I know that if it was me as a lawyer, I wouldn't want to bring my case in front of somebody who graduated from Harvard and who has ties to who knows, right? How do we know that he isn't golfing buddies with Alan Dershowitz? I mean, I don't have evidence saying that, but we don't know. That's the point I'm trying to make. So this judge should have recused himself right away, and another judge should have stepped in. Because as we're going to hear tomorrow and tonight in the article I'm about to read, Jeffrey Epstein had some very powerful friends at Harvard, folks, and not just scientists. We're talking about in the law school itself. So let's jump into this article and see what they have to say. The author is Sissy Cow, and the publication is The Observer. This article was published on the 9th of July of 2019. The headline, Can Jeffrey Epstein's Harvard power friends get him out of trouble again? Jeffrey Epstein, the well-connected Wall Street financier, pedophile, who runs a mysterious money management firm in the U.S. Virgin Islands, was arrested Saturday evening at a New Jersey airport. Again, so this guy gets arrested at this airport, right? This is a high-profile arrest. This is a man who has already been arrested one time for sex crimes. Very, very well-known person, right? All over the news. There's a bunch of articles about him, bunch of news reports about him. And you mean to tell me nobody in the FBI's office tips off journalists so we can see this dude getting perp-walked? How does that even occur? Why does he get that sort of respect? Why does he get the respect that he gets tipped off that he's getting arrested? Why does he get that respect? I just watched some 2020 episode while I was at my parents' house of this lady who tried to set up her husband to get murdered, and it ended up being a police sting. But long story short, this lady ends up getting 16 years for being involved in that. She didn't pull a trigger. She didn't hit nobody. She didn't punch nobody. She didn't assault nobody. And she gets 16 years. But this piece of shit, Jeffrey Epstein, gets 13 months with some weak-ass supervised leave of jail daily? This is what motivated me to get involved in this case in the first place. The two-tier justice system, the broken, corrupt FBI, and the weak-ass Department of Justice. That was the original motivation for me to get involved in this case. And as I got deeper into it, obviously, things changed. Once I heard what happened to these girls, once I started to really follow the case and see the devastation left in Jeffrey Epstein's wake, well, it was still about the corruption, because I think that's very important. It's very important to root that out and to squash it. But justice is the main goal at this point now for me in this case. And all of these people from Harvard, all of these people that took part in protecting him, all of these FBI agents that showed him respect, well, all of you should take a good hard look in the mirror and ask yourselves just how much were my actions responsible for enabling Jeffrey Epstein's criminal spree. Reporters from the Daily Beast, who broke the news, quickly saw that prosecutors would accuse him of a decade-old crime involving sex trafficking and molesting minors, which made him a registered sex offender in 2008. And remember, to Jeffrey Epstein, it was no big deal. He didn't think of himself as a sex offender, folks. He was not a sex offender. He was just like somebody who stole candy, according to him, in his warped-ass, decrepit, gross mind. In an official indictment on Monday, U.S. prosecutors alleged that Epstein, 66, had run a sex trafficking ring between 2001 and 2006 in which he paid girls as young as 14 to have sex with him. He was charged with 1 count of sex trafficking of minors and 1 count of conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of minors. Now, the 1 count I always found suspicious anyway, because as we have uncovered here on the podcast and obviously elsewhere, other podcasts and other outlets, it is very easy to follow the evidence in this case and come to the conclusion that this was a criminal organization, that it wasn't just Epstein acting within a vacuum, that there were other people there helping him, and those people are still running around free, folks, with nothing to worry about, obviously. No one's chasing them down, no reporters waiting outside of their houses asking them questions, none of that shit. But yet, the only two people that are facing any sort of repercussions as of now are the jail guards? Can somebody please help me wrap my mind around that? Because it's very hard for me to come to terms with the fact that the only two people facing felony charges right now are those two guards. An attorney representing 3 alleged Epstein survivors said in court that the indictment was important because it is a correction of what should have happened 10 years ago. Yeah, damn right it was. Damn right. 10 years ago, this guy should have been arrested and thrown underneath the prison. I don't want to hear any nonsense about Berman had no idea who Jeffrey Epstein was. That is such a load of hot horse shit. In 2008, Epstein faced allegations for the same crime in Florida, but a team of defense attorneys led by famed Harvard law professor Alan "I kept my underpants on" Dershowitz helped him strike a controversial plea deal with federal law enforcement officials, which gave him only 13 months in prison and allowed him to leave 6 days a week to work from his Palm Beach mansion. Imagine this smarmy, disgusting son of a bitch getting this deal. And you're not going to tell me his ties to Harvard didn't help that. How many Harvard-trained judges, prosecutors, etc., litter our justice system? I don't have the number, but I'm guessing a whole hell of a lot, folks. And again, I'm not saying everybody who's ever graduated from Harvard is a Jeffrey Epstein a protector or enabler or anything like that. But what I am saying is this: Harvard is obviously a den of scum and villainy like Mos Eisley's Cantina in Star Wars. Because what's going on there stinks from the head down. In Dershowitz, who has been accused of smearing survivors' reliability in the 2008 case, let's get something else clear, okay, folks? When they say that kind of shit, it's true. There's no doubt. He has tried to smear people. But let's remember what he is really accused of. Let's remember what Virginia Roberts had to say about Alan Dershowitz and his behavior and his role within Jeffrey Epstein's criminal organization. Because Dershowitz is not only an enabler, according to Virginia. Oh, no. He has also taken the next step. He's in the level of the same category as Prince Andrew and Bill Richardson and Glenn Dubin and Minsky and the rest of these scumbags who partook in the disgusting acts of Jeffrey Epstein. Let's remember that Dershowitz is being credibly accused of abusing Virginia Roberts. And I'm on record here, folks, all right? I believe all of the accusations that Virginia has brought forward. Every single thing that she has said about this case has proven to be credible. Everybody who listens to this podcast knows that I do not operate in the world of conspiracy. I don't operate in the world of what ifs. I operate on this podcast in the world of what has come already. Sure, we do some speculation. There's no doubt about that. But anytime I do that, I let you know, all right, this is some speculation. But when it comes to keeping things in the realm of fact, that is something that we definitely try to do on a regular basis here. And I'm not going to go off and chase some nonsense that I can't vet, that there's no receipts for. But when it comes to what Virginia has to say in this case, all of the other evidence that surrounds it, the circumstantial evidence that surrounds it, boy, oh boy, let me tell you what. It all leads to one destination. And that destination is the truth. Virginia has been nothing but honest this whole entire time, in my opinion. And men like Dershowitz, and I use that term very loosely when I'm talking about this scoundrel, a person like Dershowitz, he needs to answer these hard questions. But Epstein is still counting on a Harvard man to bail him out from a possible penalty of 45 years in prison. He is represented by Boston-based criminal defense attorney Martin Weinberg, a Harvard Law School graduate and a guest lecturer at the university. So you mean to tell me that the second time around when he got arrested, Dershowitz wasn't involved, quote unquote, but if you don't think Dershowitz was pulling strings from the back room and getting Weinberg involved in this, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're being very naive, because there is zero chance that Dershowitz was not pulling the strings from the back room. Remember, folks, according to the narrative laid out by Virginia, according to the narrative that is propped up by a lot of evidence, Alan Dershowitz has a lot to lose if Jeffrey Epstein starts spilling the beans, right? If Jeffrey Epstein goes down, that could prove to be very, very damaging to Dershowitz. So you know he's going to do everything possible for him to be involved in the case without being involved in the case. And what better way to do that than to have a proxy like Weinberg step up and stand in? Epstein's ties with Harvard run deep. Despite having never attended or worked at the university, Epstein has taken a particular interest over the years in cultivating a close circle of Harvard friends by donating tens of millions of dollars to the university. And folks, this is why. This is why. He was paying this money up front, so later on, if things went south, he knew that he had a support system at a place like Harvard, and he could have his pick of any one of these fantastic lawyers that was friendly with Dershowitz. And I haven't looked this up yet, but I can almost guarantee that Weinberg was not only a friend of Dershowitz, but he was also taught by Dershowitz at Harvard, would be my guess. Now, again, I haven't looked that up yet because it just occurred to me that that's probably the case. But after the podcast, I'm going to take a look and see if Weinberg was one of Dershowitz's students. But either way, the Harvard ties, we cannot discount this, folks. We cannot just chalk it up as a coincidence anymore. In 2003, Epstein pledged $30 million to Harvard through his private charity, Jeffrey Epstein Foundation, to establish the university's program for evolutionary dynamics, one of the nation's first research labs to study the evolution of molecular biology using a mathematical model. He wrote a $6.5 million check to the university that year to support the program's day-to-day operations. And I wonder what else. So that means he had full access to all of that information, right? This is something that not a lot of people talk about. And I've been I don't want to say chasing this story, because I think that would be a little bit much, because I haven't been chasing it. But I have been on the trail of the Jeffrey Epstein connection to these scientists who had these projects that could be used for a military gain. And according to people that I have talked to, there was a lot of secret trading with Jeffrey Epstein as well. He wasn't just trading in information of flesh. He also had a lot of information about private and confidential projects that were taking place. And if we're going on the premise that Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset and he was collecting this information to pass along to his handlers, then it would only make sense that he was also passing information along about the scientific projects he was a patron to, or that he had insider information about. We're going to stay on that here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show as well, and I have a couple of promising leads in that regard that I am trying to vet right now, and I'm getting closer to finding out if the sources I have are credible or not when it comes to that stuff. So I'll continue to follow that trail down the rabbit hole, but it makes a lot of sense, right? It really makes a lot of sense that if you're an information broker like Jeffrey Epstein was, then you're certainly going to be selling this science as well. He is also a major donor behind Harvard's Hasty Pudding Institute of 1770, a social club for students, and a Harvard English professor's television show through a separate charity, Gratitude America, also operating from the Virgin Islands. The school's student newspaper, the Harvard Crimson, reported in April. The Hasty Pudding Institute has since removed Epstein's name from its donors list. Harvard declined to comment on Epstein's gift and its current status. So we know in retrospect now, in hindsight, we know that they initiated an investigation into the university, into their ties with Epstein, and we know what came back from that investigation now. But I am also on record saying that I don't think it went deep enough. We need true outside oversight for all of this, folks. Outside oversight, unbiased outside oversight. Until we get to that, well, I don't think we're ever going to get the real story about Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with Harvard, unless, of course, a whistleblower comes forward, maybe one of these professors that Jeffrey Epstein was a patron to. Maybe one of these guys grows a conscience overnight and decides to come forward and air it all out. I wouldn't hold my breath, but maybe. Aside from generous donations, Epstein has also been on the board of Harvard's Mind, Brain, and Behavior Committee, an inter-faculty initiative, and forged close friendships with prominent Harvard men, including Alan Dershowitz, former Harvard President Lawrence H. Summers, and former Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Science Henry Rosovsky. For a few years, Epstein even had an office in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just to be close to these people, despite the fact that this man's businesses were all based in the Virgin Islands. Now, recently when the report came out, I know there was a lot of shock about the revelations of the office, and this was going around for a while. People have talked about the office at Harvard, and it's just mind-blowing that this man was afforded those privileges at that campus, at that esteemed university, a university with rarefied air. This man is running around like he is the king of the world on this campus, doing whatever he wants, his own office, his own phone line, and the ability to prowl around the campus and look for his next victim, as Maria Farmer stated, so that he could look for nubiles. That's the sort of vernacular they would use when they would talk about these young girls. And this disgusting prick had an office on your campus? No wonder Dr. DeLay is so fired up to come on the podcast and go scorched earth on you scumbags. Since news about his arrest broke on Saturday, many outlets have referred to Epstein as a billionaire. But Forbes challenged his billionaire title in an article on Monday, saying the magazine had never included him on its real-time billionaires rankings because the source of his wealth generates no public records, nor has his client list ever been released. Yeah, no shit. That's what happens when you're a money launderer, folks. Your client list isn't going to be released. What do you think? The banker that's laundering money for the cartels is releasing lists? Is going to comply with investigations? That shit doesn't happen. These guys know their business. They know what they're about. These traffickers and these money launderers and these people who stash money and know how to divert money, etc., these dudes know their craft. These dudes aren't bumbling around like a bunch of assholes. These are smart, intelligent, shrewd MFs who know how to bury this money forensically. And if you don't think Jeffrey Epstein had a team of fantastic people working for him to bury this money, you are out to lunch, my friends. Because, as I've said from the very first episode here on the podcast in August of 2019, the headline is about RICO. This is a RICO case like I have never seen before. And all of these guys at Harvard, they would all be getting an indictment from me if I was the prosecutor. Because there's a lot more going on here, folks. There is a lot more going on. How many of these scientists sold confidential and private secrets to Jeffrey Epstein? How many of them were finessed into giving him these secrets after Jeffrey Epstein compiled a dossier on them for their illicit behavior with underage girls? Now, I don't have direct evidence of that yet. But I'll tell you what, folks, the evidence is leading that way. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to take shape, and an image is starting to form within the box. So one thing that you can certainly count on is that I will continue to follow the money aspect in this case until there is no trail left to follow, because there is a lot more here, folks. There is a lot more here than meets the eye. There is a lot more going on, and I honestly believe that the more I look into these professors, the more I look into the location of Zorro Ranch and how close it was to not only the Santa Fe Institute, but Los Alamos, the more I am convinced that Epstein was not only engaged in stealing information and creating information on people who were in positions of power, but I truly believe that he was involved in espionage and the stealing of technology to pass on to whoever his handlers were. And that is a thread that I am certainly pulling right now, folks. That is something that I am looking at with a very keen eye, with a very powerful microscope, shall we say. And the more we add the context to it, and the more we hear from people like Dr. DeLay, the more we're going to be able to build this case, and the more we're going to be able to eventually get to where we're all hoping to get to. That is the truth, and then eventually justice. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me at Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. And I had some people ask me where they could find the link to help out with the podcast, and you can find that link in the description box. That will take you to all of the stuff for the show. That's the link for the article, etc., etc. You can find all of that stuff right in the description box. All right, folks, tomorrow we will be back, and we will be joined by Dr. Stephen DeLay here on the program, and it is an episode that you do not want to miss. Until then, everybody, I hope you all had a fantastic day, and I hope you all have a fantastic night.